Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another beautiful episode of Biscotti Conversations after a long break. This is technically take two.
Long break? We did this less than 24 hours ago.
I know, but it was a practice run. So when
it wasn't intended as a practice run. We were going to make it one. We had no choice.
We did not turn our microphones to the correct setting. So
yeah,
but it was not the correct setting. One sec, we're just going to get confirmation through somebody that these are actually at an okay volume for everybody as well, because I don't even know. How we doing, Tom? Just let me know, bro.
We're relying on you.
We're relying on you, Tom. All good. Fantastic. Brilliant.
Fuck. I wasn't going to risk having an evening or a late afternoon of talking about it again and have the trauma of realising I've gone through all of that pain and it's not being recorded. Because we're doing part one, okay? So the first 20 films. We thought it would be a joy when we started, didn't we? We're like, don't worry, let's make the most of this. It will get worse from here on in.
Our mood as high as possible, and it just kept dragging.
And we kind of looking at each other like, do you feel a bit shit right now? Yeah. Do you realise we have 10 films to go? Yeah.
You feel as bad as we do by the time that we're finished with this, because it is a stonker of a list.
But going back, we're doing a public service. So you don't have to, if you can really feel the authenticity we feel when we describe these movies, then you won't be watching them. Therefore, we've done a good thing.
Absolutely, especially when we break down them as well. You'll find that there is no matter how much narrative and analysis goes into it, one does end up rambling, as the movies, metaphorically or similarly, if you prefer, do actually do.
Yeah, the movies are rambles. Yeah. It's hard to pick out the facts, and we found this yesterday. But we've done the practice run, so
it's a glorious waste of ours, yours, and everybody's time. But it's also a fantastic way of blowing off steam and realizing how much you appreciate good films and people putting the correct amount of effort in, and actually being self-aware enough to realize their mistakes and correct said mistakes.
They're all learning experiences. That's, I guess, one reason we bother, if we were to pick one out. We're okay down the Guinness now, but I'm afraid I already did half.
Oh, you've already done
I was a bit tired. I needed to wake up just before the mic was on.
Lancia, everybody, cheers.
It's what it is.
I'm so slow at doing that.
Cool. So, right. So yesterday we began, if you remember, discussing kind of the 3 rules in which how we're going to order this.
Absolutely.
The list is going to be online, so you can Google this in your own time if you can spare the bandwidth for that shit.
Absolutely. But we'll also place as well the films that we have gone through thus far on bar maybe the top 5, so that you're trapped and having to check them out if your curiosity takes you.
And if you're really that keen, you'll be compelled to watch all of this. So
absolutely.
That's on you. Right, so the 3 rules we set up, the first one's the most obvious. Each film is to be criticised in turn, in reverse order, starting from good bad to bad bad.
Really bad. Like, you're not really that bad if you're not a bad film person.
We are allowed, this is rule number 2, we are allowed to reference other films on the list if it is relevant to the conversation. So we'll do a bit of a reveal on the way. However, this rolls on to rule number 3. There is one film we will not give you the title of until the very end. It is the worst film ever made. It is so bad. It is this sort of Black Death cinematic event that has existed. Just the worst scourge on the cinematic world.
It's like dropping the C-bomb in an incorrect moment, or
like in front of your grandparents.
Yeah, exactly. Or,
and having it last for 2 hours while they tell you off.
Or I don't even know, wearing a clan outfit in the wrong neighborhood.
Any neighborhood.
Yeah. Why did I say wrong neighborhood? I mean, I suppose some would be worse than others, actually.
Go up north, but they do it half the time.
Let's not be mean. Let's not get too political.
Mate, did you see a picture?
The reason why we're bringing that up is because of the fact that one of the films that we did watch does veer towards that topic, but that will not be mentioned until part 3.
Yes, the rule actually is we cannot mention the name of the final worst film ever, but we are allowed to get angry about it at any time we choose.
Absolutely.
So it's going to come up. If we want a distraction from something that's averagely bad, we can compare it to this film, which is really, really bad, and feel a bit better about the films we're discussing, and we can carry on.
Every single movie on this list is better than that movie, and you would rather watch every
100 times
single movie,
Yeah.
2 times or more, rather than subject yourself to just watching this piece of shit, fucking terrible ass.
It's so bad, we even attacked him with the sander today, didn't we?
Yeah, we're doing some garden. Well, not garden work. We're creating a bar actually, and
garden work started in the garden.
Yeah, we're doing it in the garden. Yeah, and so we then subjected the DVD case of said movie, which I managed to locate a few years ago for 24 pence in CEX, to which I've never seen.
They hurled it at you and closed up really early in case you returned it.
Yeah, they were very glad to be rid of it. Like it was like, you know, that I don't know, like the old movie, you know, of that. Like, or it might be a Twilight Zone episode where
the haunted shop and it is you and I. God.
You know, there's the
was that real?
I'm glad he's taken it with him now.
Like
I don't have to do it.
It's like the monkey's fist. It was a curse on you.
We're quite when it comes to bad films as well, we do get quite how would you say emotional and what's the other word as well? No, like when you are scared of walking under ladders and black cats and whatnot.
Superstitious.
We get reasonably quite superstitious about.
For example, the reason our recording didn't work yesterday. However, the settings were fine. The only thing that has changed between now and back then is the Forbidden Film DVD is not in the room with us anymore, so it's working. So it's so bad it actually jams equipment.
Yeah. It throws out a signal that just prevents things from working. Anyway, we've digressed long enough, and it's time for us to delve into. We know the rules, so do we, and we should now delve straight into our first item of the day, which is a wondrous, brilliant, fantastic movie.
Actually, yeah, we're at the good end here, at the solid gold end. This film really is actually that badly good.
It's fantastic. We have watched it so many times.
I do not have the real name for it, though. So you have it in front of me if you want to attempt it.
Jugumui Sengu.
Better known as
Death Game. Death Game is film of films. It is like the blokiest film you've ever seen. There's nothing but drinking, fighting, and partying, going in bars, dancing, and they're after this fabled statue, which has is it 4 million or 2 million?
It's worth $2 million. That's the first. That's like the first fact the film gives you, and it reminds you of the fact.
2
million.
That's right. That's right.
2 million.
2 million.
But what can we describe this kaleidoscope of the film? There isn't much plot besides these 3 main characters who are trying to get the Buddha. Yeah. And of course, the fact they're calling it the Buddha is distracting.
It's like a really good strain of weed, like amazing. Like they're all after, and they're always going like, the Buddha, my precious Buddha,
my precious Buddha.
Yeah, and there's like a guy with aviators who's like the kind of the third,
I lost you.
The third tier down bad guy. And
no, you're never gonna leave me again.
He educates the recruits by like beating them up and calling them useless, incompetent, worthless pieces of nothing. You stupid, incompetent. Stupid.
Line for line, this film is full of quotes.
It's brilliant. But it's also subjectively, arguably, and in our opinion, it also belongs on this list. It is not a great movie.
No,
it's not a well-made.
It's a minuscule budget. There's absolutely no careful eye or correlation between the events at all, really.
No.
We can jump straight to the scenes in particular, actually. So this film is full of piss-ups that just happen. And there's no normal consistency between day or night shots. There's one scene where the 2 main guys, who are like best mates but kind of beating each other up as well, decide to go for a drink. They don't go for there isn't a sort of, they walk into the bar, it's proper cool, and they get some gangster shit done, like Robert De Niro. They go in and get absolutely hammered.
Yeah, they get like really drunk, and then all of a sudden they start like they just happen to be in tuxedos as well. Like all of a sudden they're like, right now we're in tuxedos, and then they're dancing.
Shit-faced.
They're like dancing, and then there's this the soundtrack. the soundtrack to this movie, which
Oh,
we
something
have
else.
looked and looked and looked and looked and cannot find it. We've used SoundCloud.
It's the funkiest, most 70s soundtrack I've ever heard.
It's so cool. It's so dope. It's
up there, and it was straight away we noticed how good it was.
yeah,
but
differentiation as well. There's also calming bits as well, where you can almost sing along to it because it's they really take their time and put a smooth groove into it and kind of seduce the audience. And then there's also these classic 70s.
It's all the time. There's one bit, isn't there? Like during the night out, Kin, the main guy, sleeps in the bar, and the music starts playing. And although he's passed out literally on the floor in full gear, he's tapping his foot along as the music starts.
Yeah, the guy's
he's this machine who cannot help but party all the time.
Yeah, he's like never stops.
Then he
he's always got a cigar in his mouth. By the way,
always
he fights with a cigar in his mouth. It's amazing. He does like leg kicks in the 70s.
There's some great close-ups, isn't there?
Oh yeah, and it like zooms in. It's like
cigar man,
and he's always got the cigar, and it like the head turn and the camera zoom in at the same time. And there's one particular scene as well at the end. I mean, if we've kind of discussed the other bits, and we've got the three characters are King, Sintaro, and Huang Zhangli, which
That's
we can never
actor's
really remember.
name.
That's the actor's name, but we can't really remember his name. We're
matter,
going to do. We love Mr. Huang Zhangli so much that we're actually going to send him a letter, and we're going to probably do an entire podcast, which in the future, which will be reasonably.
Shame we haven't sent him a letter actually.
Yeah,
already.
We've been working kind of silently, like in the background. In our subconscious, we've been working on it for a while. We're kind of getting up the courage and the nerve to actually phrase it and send it.
Like,
to
we've
properly.
messaged all gas, no breaks, and that was no qualms. But Huang Zhangli is a god.
Of kicking ass.
The god. I'm worried that if he posts us a reply, I'd open the envelope and I'd suddenly just be booted in the face.
Yeah,
or
a restraining order for like how much we love this guy, because he's brought so much
joy, genuine joy. Because the time we were developing this list, which we haven't actually mentioned already, it was about nearly 3 years. We were doing this and watching kung fu films, and that was certainly the light to this site.
Absolutely, we watched the best part of like over a little over 100 kung fu movies.
Death Game is the ambitious, bold bridge between the two.
Yeah, bad movies and kung fu.
Death Game is not really a real kung fu movie because it is so mindless.
Yeah, it doesn't there's no fixed there's no fixed utilization of like any kung fu styles or breakdowns, and they don't discuss any of those stuff.
Mindless fighting,
it's just kicking and punching and like whatnot,
and everyone is just getting hammered all the time. Okay, so now we can talk about the great scene. So basically, not only are the three main characters trying to get the Buddha, they're also competing with one another to get it. So Sintaro, who's the ninja, speaks to Kin, our main guy, and decides to offer him a drink. Of course, Kin will never turn down a drink.
No.
He clearly has poisoned the drink.
Very clearly.
He drinks about 12 of them.
And he's already betrayed him twice in the movie, so there's no reason for him to trust him at all.
He's like, fuck it, buy me a drink.
He's like, you want to go drink? We're doing it,
I am not going to be seen turning down a drink.
Exactly, they're in the restaurant already, and the guy's down and drinks. He doesn't even care.
He's drinking these laced drinks until he finally his head hits the table.
The hilarious thing was that Sintaro, he doesn't even care that Sintaro is not actually drinking that much. It's like, yeah, I'm just somebody buying it.
It's clearly poisoned, and Kim obviously knows it's poisoned as well. But so let's go through with it. But anyway, so after he passes out, they drag him outside and start beating the shit out of him.
Yeah.
They also have hung him to a device where basically if he loses his grip on the wooden post above him, he is going to hang himself.
He'll die.
And eventually,
they beat him up for like what in film time they make it look like, because we see day and night shots as well between that scene. So it's about like just under maybe under 24 hours or over 24 hours that he's sat there in this position kicking the living shit. And the torture kicking me, like they kick the living shit out of him. Like, I can't describe it any other way. And then scene cuts.
Eventually he dies.
He falls, and the next thing actually happens, and then he's dead. And then they take his body and hurl it into the sewer. and to be never touched again.
Now, in a normal film, you'd think that would be the end of events. That was all that was necessary.
Any human being could survive this.
However, not in Death Game, man. Not Death Game. He gets up. He's covered in sewage and his own blood, and decides to do a workout thing
in the sewer.
And then he goes to beat up all the main bad guys.
All of them.
Smashes them all 20 minutes before the film actually ends.
All 4 tiers, from low foot
He's just going through the building.
Middle reinforcing guy,
after everything.
Stupid incompetent pieces of nothing bloke, kicks his ass, kicks all the gangsters that are the head, and also kicks like the Dragon King, like his ass as well.
And then you're left for the final 15 minutes, like, why are they carrying on? The plot is actually over. He's just killed them all.
Dead by now.
Clearly no one can touch him.
Yeah.
I went into work the next day and I was telling everyone this story.
Same.
I mean, I spoke to people with hair like mine and longer who would probably be into this film. And I said, I've got to tell you about this film we saw. It's just a clusterfuck of drinking, fighting, impossible things happening, and the bad guy looking too good. But somehow, in its sort of no-budget innocence, it pulls it all off, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It surprised us to all hell, and it is a bridge between two worlds, and we have used it far enough and far too much time on it, but it deserves it.
Yeah.
Like, we just wanted to mention there's a reason why this one will probably forever stay at the top of our bad movies list.
I wouldn't want anything to replace it.
No, I really don't want to at this point.
Right, we are keeping to a time limit.
Absolutely.
So we're going to try and do this in under 2 hours, and we love Death Game, but we have to leave it there.
Absolutely.
However, we love the next film as well. This is still the good end, and let's make the most of it. What's the next film called? Sorry,
we're only going to go downhill from here, but we have next Turkish Star Wars.
The best way to describe the background to this and the Turkish films of its strange genre. Basically, in the north of Turkey in the mid-70s up to the early 80s, there was little access to Western cinema, although it was in demand. So it was popular to rip off Western TV shows and Hollywood movies. The masterpiece of the films that they ripped off is Turkish Star Wars. Now, they had no budget and very little footage to go on. They only managed to find the trailer of the original Star Wars film and footage from the Russian space program to try and make this look like a real sci-fi film. And it's hilarious immediately. But immediately it makes no sense.
That's all.
We had Spanish subtitles as well. And we don't know Turkish, obviously, either. So the whole thing is utterly bewildering.
It didn't matter. It really
Do you know that wormhole bit in 2001: A Space Odyssey? With all the lights and shit, and you're wondering what's going on. It's like that for 2 hours, really.
Or if you're a Douglas Adams fan, when they go into the total perspective vortex, and Zaphod Beeblebrox goes in there, and it drives mere mortals insane because they are, for that brief half a quintillionth of a second, given a brief glimpse in their mind's eye of the entire universe and all of existence, and are able to it's put into the total perspective. Tis the opposite of a misnomer. It is a literal thing, and this movie is much like that. You finish it, and you simultaneously don't know what you've seen.
But know you've seen a truth about the universe as before now being hidden from you. It's hilarious. It's utterly out of this world, literally, in every way. The main characters play it completely straight as well, which adds to kind of the illusion that they think this is a real film and think they're projecting a real film, which makes it all the more hilarious.
The bad guy is as if Pinhead was combined with Darth Vader and was then
with a bit of Flash Gordon thrown in as well.
And then Mad Maxian and as well, and then just kind of put onto the set, and it's so wackadoodle. There's no real fixed reference point for anything happening. I mean, that being said, we did try finding.
They land on a planet. Then they leave the planet at the end, but I don't know what happened.
Yeah, and there's also splices as well of other Spielberg movies. And
they stole Indiana Jones.
It's all of a sudden played at some point when they're trying to escape from their imprisonment, and they get caught and imprisoned at some point.
To leave, we will have to leave this one on the final point.
Yeah.
My final point is, like Death Game, but even more so with Turkish Star Wars, criticism on it would be obvious, but it makes all criticism invalid. What's the point in wasting time criticizing Turkish Star Wars? It's so above critics, isn't it? It just exists. You're forced to accept it.
And yet, my final point on it as well, just insulating there, would be that we would not blame you if you never watched it.
But watch the first 15 minutes.
Oh, please.
That I would recommend.
It will be like nothing you've ever seen. Of the X-wings in green with a green filter over the top from the trailer of the first Part 4 Star Wars movie. It's just breathtakingly hilarious. It's
something else. Something else the first time you see that. But it will feel like the first time you watch it, it will feel like the film is going on for hours.
Star Wars. On to the next one. We have our classic.
One of your favourites, isn't it?
I love this movie. Oh my good lord!
It's almost a real movie, but it's just ambitiously stupid enough that it's not a real movie, really.
So we have a cult classic amongst bad movies and amongst people that enjoy a incredibly quirky and strangely hilarious, non-real, like the completely devoid of reality and type films, pure fantasy, and it is called Zardos. And if you already know the name of it, it of course features.
If you already know the name of it, then you're already laughing at the title because you know what's in it.
Absolutely, Mexican mustachioed Sean Connery with a full bandolier shirt.
The best outfit in cinema history.
Probably, yeah. I mean, like that dress from Gone with the Wind's got nothing on this man's high boots.
Sean Connery in Zardos, man.
Sean Connery in Zardos is the dopest thing.
Tight red leather panties.
Oh, dude. Oh yeah, and he has a plaited hair which goes all the way down to his arse.
He's literally the hairiest dude in cinema.
Just type Zardos in Sean Connery and have a look at a photo of it. You will not regard it as a waste.
And you will want to watch the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Like there's great quotes.
Can you tell us a bit about what it's about, though? There's a floating head in it.
So there's a floating stone head, which is commanded. So we have the two kind of like parallel supposed universes, where we have the people on the ground, which is all the men that kind of have these cavemen genes, which have been cast out of the supposed paradise, where people live forever as long as they behave themselves under this weird fascist regime, where the kind of young and more effeminate gentlemen and all of the beautiful women kind of reside and pass judgment upon each other, and they make each other, and as punishment if you fuck up there, they make you old, and then they cast you out, and then and like kind of like the whole exchange is all done on life years, and then it's really funny how they sit round the big table with fruit bowls, and then they go,
oh yeah, I remember that
to each other, and then the person, like his eyes like try and roll into the back of his head, but it's like bad acting, so he's like, oh my god,
yeah.
And then anyway, so we've got like kind of the cavemen, the dudes on. Okay, thank you very much for that. I do apologize.
We're back, are we? Is it working?
Technical difficulties there. Yeah, absolutely. We are on again. Just going to get the go ahead once.
Right, so to top off, that was Deadly Prey. It's just been crossed off the list. We are now down to number 55. You want me to tell you what number 55 is?
I'm just going to go ahead from my mate again just to make sure that the sound is okay.
Good shout. At least we got one viewer, hey?
Yeah, absolutely. Like that. Oh no, we're two areas. My man. Shout out to Tom again.
Happy days. Cheers, Tom.
Big on you, Tom. Thank you very much, bro. Number one fan.
You've earned it. Right. Number 55 on our list is Stone Cold, better known as
The Mullet.
The Mullet.
Absolutely.
Because it's not actually about the oversized former 80s football star who plays the main role. His mullet, his haircut, is so distracting.
It's like it's
the most charismatic thing in the film by far.
Like you can't help but not look at his hair.
I'm staring at it. Like, we've seen it twice. It's about the mullet.
Scene from scene as well. Like there's a lot of people that are. So we have like it was quite bigged up as well in its time, but then it bombed super hard when it actually came out. So we've got people like, for example, it's a bad movie, but there's a lot of like incredible things in it. So we have things like the main bad guy in it, the head of this biker gang, who are the main bad guys. So, I mean, take me the story for a moment. So
story, okay.
So it's about Stone Cold, who's the guy with the mullet, and then he is employed by the police or the government in order to go undercover in order to, and he has to befriend these horrible bikers who are selling meth or something like that.
Yeah.
And then they're trying to take over City Hall in the end. But yeah, they end up killing a judge, which we'll go into in a minute. Anyway, so the cast though is one of the best one I'll tell you that. That's one. The main bad guy is the android from the second or third Aliens movie, the one that needs to go out into the planet and then has to edit fuck with the transmitter thing so that they're able to zoom off the planet away from the aliens. The one that like they bleed milk. Those androids. And then the other guy is that the one of the main kind of like the hatchet men in the gang.
Is Mac's dad, and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
And we're gonna get onto him in a second. Him though,
he's like henchman, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. But he's like I suppose he is kind of like the main hatchet man. But one of like the sub guys underneath him who gets his like fingers taken off by the milk bleeding android gnarly dude who's the main bad guy. He is the biker in the second Terminator film who is hurled over the bar, and he's like, you forgot to say please, and then puts his cigar out in Arnie's like bare chest when he's like naked in the bar. And then he's like, Arnie's like, I need your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle. He's like, take it. He goes outside and he's like, can't make me take the man's wheels on. That's a different guy. I love that movie. It's so much better than this one. Please watch it over that one any day.
Yeah.
Anyway, the third and final member of the cast, it was dope, which should not be forgotten, is of course Mac's dad from It's Always Sunny.
You get the impression, because obviously the cast of It's Always Sunny are obsessed with really dumbass action movies. They've obviously seen this one. There are moments in it that just make no sense. There's a city. The beginning opens up with a shot of a guy shooting a load of cheesy biscuits.
Yeah, Ritz crackers. He just goes to town,
shooting at nothing. So you already know you're up for a bit of a ride.
He's like, we get to be mean to all the locals.
We're the bad guy.
And then Stone Cold's in the one of the aisles, and he's like making a coffee or something. So then one of them goes like, "Why don't you get down on the floor with everybody else? This is a stick up." And he's like, looks down on the guy. And he's like massive and with a mullet, and everything swings around the back, and he just decks this guy.
The mullet is doing all the thinking, isn't it?
Yeah, we have this thought that the mullet is actually anthropomorphically driving Stone Cold.
And actually, the mullet is the main bad guy.
Yeah, like Snake's hair in The Simpsons.
Or the cockroach in Team America.
Absolutely, yeah. It took us ages to get to that last time. Anyway, the film ends with this great, insane scene, over-budget nonsense, where the main bad guy heads towards him on a motorcycle, and in the courthouse, which we can't even remember how they actually get the motorcycle into the courthouse in the first case.
No one knows.
And then he dives out the way, and it goes up this ramp that happens to be there out of the main courthouse window and hits a helicopter, which explodes everywhere. And it's for its pyrotechnics, it's a very enjoyable movie, but it's poorly put together, poorly plotted. The script is ridiculous, but it's entertaining and it's adrenaline-fueled nonsense.
Yep.
Do not watch this movie.
Don't watch it, no. So let's cross over.
Anyway, we're on to the next
one.
Well,
a bit of a healthy background here. When we did this yesterday and our mics were fucking up and we didn't realise, we were ranting about this film pretty hard to begin with. Then we decided, actually no, we forgot it was our third best of the bad films for a long time. This film is another Turkish film. It's called Turkish Rambo, or Korkusuz, or gay Turkish Rambo, because there's a lot of ab shots, and the director clearly fancies the main dude, who looks like he's been injected with hormone stuff for horses from birth. He's too big. But this film is got no budget, but what else can you add? It's somewhat nice in its way.
It's quite hilarious.
It's very innocent.
And it is very innocent. It really means well, and it lifts directly from First Blood, the Rambo movie, and in its the concoction that it is as a film. They have like he has flashbacks to the Colonel who's telling him stuff, and then the Colonel comes back later and then starts, telling him like you don't have to be this animal anymore. You can be a better person. And he's like, you say that to the guys that are trying to arrest me, even though there's less to do, sort of thing. And we watched it, I think, in Punjab or Hindi or something like that, or something.
Yeah, I think it was translation. One of the funniest scenes, which was clearly far too dangerous was they managed to bury the dude alive, just keep him
Up to his head.
keep his head. But then, of course, it starts raining, and the film having no budget, the rain is real. So, like, his head managed to submerge itself above a slight bank, but he's covered in water. It's really worrying, doesn't it? Not only got the pressure of all that earth on him, it looks like he's going to drown at any moment.
He actually can't get up out
He
of the
goes, he goes through with it.
9 yards with this thing. They cared about making this movie, whatever you say about it, and there was a lot of effort that kind of went into it as a version of Turkish Rambo. So for that reason, that's why it's so high on the list.
Yeah, it has its credit. Would I recommend it?
No.
Unless you're into the trashiest of action films.
Or you're a fan of Rambo remake.
Or if you like Turkish films made in the mid-70s, which isn't many people.
Then we suggest you should watch it.
Let's cross that off now.
There we go. We're on to the next one.
Very important film. Very important film.
Okay, this one we discussed a lot, and
it was a nice discussion, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the nicest ones to discuss. It is an essential movie on this list. It is probably the most well-known one out of every single movie.
We don't actually need to name that film.
It's so well known by everybody, and of course, directed, starring, written by, and
that guy from that country who he never quite admits.
Supposedly Poland.
Some say Poland. We know he lived in France for about 10 years. He admitted that years later.
Yeah, we have on number 53, claiming still probably a few years ago to this day, that he was from New Orleans. We have the one there in me, the crazy.
Oh, you want to tell him, do you?
It is The Room.
All right,
The Room is where it is on our list.
It is not the worst film ever made. Not by a long way. At the time, yeah, I thought that, but it was the only really, really bad film I'd ever seen.
Watch The Room, this movie, over every single movie that we are about to discuss after this film.
Yeah,
easily, because it's just so rewatchable, and it's so quotable and mismatched and strange, and the outfit
naive too,
very
naive,
odd and quirky and
creepy
in places, and the sex
scenes
are way too long, and and a lot of people as well that have dipped their toe into the murky waters of bad movies have had an experience with this movie.
I will have seen The Room, and in fact, the inspiration for this very podcast. Have you seen The Room? Yeah, that's actually a pretty good film compared to some of the others I'd seen. Obviously, that motivated the two of us to have a record of this and insist that The Room is actually relatively okay, but fucking bad. It's 2 hours long. It only needs to be about 35, 40 minutes.
Yeah, realistically. And it's great as well to watch. I do, recommend going on YouTube and watching other people's reactions to. In terms of cinema audiences, because it still has midnight and constant streamings all over the world, and is favoured by. And it's one of the biggest cult movies ever made. It's a huge cult movie. Yeah,
it's the Rocky Horror Picture Show for the millennials. Everyone's seen it. And you probably should see it, actually.
Yeah, and if you haven't, then watch The Disaster Artist, because it's a great way of understanding, because they really do pick apart nicely the nuances that kind of make it what it is as a movie.
Well, they could have gone further. Wazao is clearly an arsehole. And if that was if they were having to appease him by making Disaster Artists, and they still went pretty far, it suggests the reality was worse.
I think the ending of it, when he takes him into the movie screening and he thinks his creation, he's taking it so seriously.
That took a year. At least a year.
That for him to get over it, and he takes his creation so seriously, and then James Franco's character, obviously Greg Sestero in real life, and the two of them are best friends, Tommy Wiseau and Greg Sestero. He takes him back into the theater, and he's like, did you ever think that? He says, you ever think that Francis Ford Coppola got a reaction like this, and everyone pissing themselves, at the movie because of the fact they all find it so funny, whereas he wants them to experience it as this melodrama, breakdown of the human psyche and his emotions and his relationship with the world and America and women and the legal system and everything. Where it's almost the counter opposite. He just kind of dips his toe in a load of different
and proves he knows nothing about any of those things, or perhaps not many complicated subjects at all, and certainly not filmmaking.
But he tackles the very top of every single one of them, and the effort and money that he sunk into this project is just absolutely crazy for what it is. So
where did that money
for
go?
us is, ladies and gentlemen, is The Room.
Just watch it. You'll have your own interpretation.
Absolutely, if you can sit through it. 2 dozen roses.
Hi, Johnny. Didn't know it was you.
Oh, hey, babe.
Thanks. Keep the change.
What's the
Hi, doggy.
It's not true. It's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not.
Oh,
hi,
hi,
Mark. Okay, right, there we go. That's the room. We're going to move on to the next fantastic
Dungeons and Dragons.
Dungeons and Dragons, featuring a ham-acting, insane, way over the top, and redonkulous, movie-saving Jeremy Irons.
Jeremy Irons. Now, this film is better rather than Dungeons and Dragons. Maybe CGI and Blow might be a more accurate title for it.
It does feel like the script writers with the animation team were on a lot of bath salts when they were actually tackling the screenplay for this movie.
So you have the setup for us was it was a real dramatic swing, wasn't it? But the first half of the movie, there's this racist caricature of a character who consumes a lot of screen time, and
it's really loud.
It's horrible, really.
You almost feel like,
but then
he's not even enjoying it. Like, why?
Yeah, but he gets killed off, and we try and the writers think we're sympathising with him, but clearly they're like, "What do we do? We've lost our great sub character." They must have done all-nighter, did a mountain of blow, and then presented to the director the following day, like, "This is the script. This is how I finished in the film. It is a masterpiece."
Yeah.
It's not, but there are a lot of dragons. Almost so many dragons. You think it might be a masterpiece of CGI.
And Jeremy Irons screaming hell and fury and brimstone to the sky that doesn't exist. That's I've never seen somebody shout at a green screen.
Yeah, it becomes
such ferocity.
It suddenly races towards the finish line, and it's really funny.
It's so funny,
but absolutely nonsensical in terms of plot. Right at the very end. I mean, like, Dungeons and Dragons is a game where you're supposed to make it up as you go along. And true to form, the writers were clearly making this film up as they went along.
They were probably rolling dice and moving things along the board whilst they were actually...
What's the most unlikely thing that might happen right now? Yeah, let's do that. That's the film.
That's what that happens, absolutely.
So, would I recommend it?
No, I wouldn't recommend any movie. Like, I would not recommend this movie. But also, if you're kind of
there are worse movies.
Beer, there's a lot of worse movies. Every movie we're going to mention after this is worse than this one. But if you want a beer, sit down at the end of a long day, and you want to just shout rude obscenities at a TV screen and hurl popcorn at it from the safety of your couch, chair, or bed.
Yeah, it's good for that.
This is a great movie to do that too, and we loved it for that. And much like the next movie that we're going to go on to, actually.
Say much like. Number 51 is In the Name of the King by Uwe Boll. It's another fantasy. It was deliberately trying to catch up with the whole Lord of the Rings. It was done at the same time, and Uwe Boll actually made a trilogy out of his god-awful film.
Even for the first one, and we're going to discuss the second one later on because it's coming up soon, but he managed to get a hold of
Jason Statham.
He managed to get hold of Jason Statham, and who was the other person as well? Was John Rhys Davis.
He plays Gimli.
He managed to lash down poor old John Rhys Davis, who has to trudge his way through this waster of a script.
It looks like he's actually panicking for the whole film because you can see the film go off the rails.
Jason Statham's character's name, by the way, is just called Farmer. That's all we know.
It's a sort of cliched compilation of Frodo, Gandalf, and Aragorn.
Yeah, like Legolas, kind of.
And it sucks.
It's really bad.
I'm trying to think what else happens, really. Uwe Boll is a bad director, and he's famous for making dreadful films.
Like Jason Statham is on a farm.
This is his biggest budget film ever, and they never gave him the budget to do anything like this again.
Thank God. Bad. Like, and he did try.
Did not stop him making a trilogy, though.
Yeah, he did try very hard. Like, I mean, it's almost one of these films where the less said about it, really, the better. But we'll mention a little bit more about it. It's if we can, it's a long romp with very typical aspects and themes to it. So it's very predictable when you're going through. You're like, oh, I reckon that's going to happen. Oh, it just did.
And yet we don't know what's going on. Even at the final fight, Farmer our beloved main character, has to remind us about the whole plot of the film before he gets into the fight. As if the director actually knew at this point that he had no idea what the film was about, and neither does anyone watching
I
it.
still can't remember what the plot of the film
No.
is.
Apparently it was in the name of the king.
It was in the name of
I don't
the
even
king, though,
remember
and we
if there
don't
was a
know
king
who the king
in-
is. And Sean Rhys Davis appears like kind of semi-bearded and is like, oh yeah, he stops all the resistance kind of thing from going with the guy that's the bad dude in the woods that nearly rallies everybody. That's the good guys. That's our our kind of village people and the working man and woman and whatnot, and then and the farmers and pickers and windscreen wipers and I'm just joking. Anyway, and Matt, and then John Rhys Davies is the one that goes, no, Jason Statham's the guy that knows what he's talking about, the farmer.
As just to wipe his hands of the film.
He's like, there we go. No, I don't have to deal with this shit anymore.
Huey Paul, do I have to be in this film anymore?
No.
Yes, you do.
Fuck's sake. God damn it.
Save the film.
It's bullshit. I'm
Right,
going to go
but
back to
basically
Lord of the
the film-
Rings, which is a masterpiece.
Yeah, the film was beyond saving.
I-
With the further two films,
disliked
believe
it.
me, it wasn't so. So let's cross that over.
Anyway, yeah.
We're up to number 50.
Number 50.
I'll introduce this one actually, because
can I go and grab another beer?
you grab another beer. I'll introduce this one. So this,
Please lead on to Harrison Ford's reaction to it on Saturday night as well.
I will
Oh
wait.
my
I
God.
will wait for you for that part. I'll introduce the film because I've seen it fairly recently. I have a friend in Norfolk who lives with a die-hard Star Wars fan, and this was December time I visited, and we rabbit about knowing bad films and getting quite into it. I decided maybe we should watch the Star Wars Holiday Special because it was the season, and his housemate adamantly refused. Dug his heels in, said no, it's not possible. We can be watching this film. I absolutely rule it out. He had watched it only once in 1978 when it was aired. Realised 4 decades later I was going to be ruining his dream of Star Wars. From the moment I walked into that house, he was playing some Star Wars related game, so you knew it was going to hit particularly hard. So what is so bad about this film? It's the sheer un-Star Warsness of the entire escapades. It begins remotely Star Warsy and then completely loses the thread. It becomes a really bad variety television thing, and with these Wookiees who don't speak any English, so there's no
Family of
plot.
Wookiees.
The technology they present in it, Star Wars was looking good because it was glossy and ahead of its time. The technology in it is impossibly out of the way and
It's almost
impractical.
Yeah,
you know,
like he
it's
completely-
like the stuff you see in Brazil. You know, the technology is only there to actually make everyone's life worse. This film was full of that stuff. There's also a young Wookiee who clearly seems to be getting some sort of sexual pleasure from some immersive VR thing where he watches some knockoff Diana Ross do a song. So it's weird as well.
And they have a racist cooking show as well.
They have
a
the racist
intergalactic
caricature.
cooking show.
But it was also supposed to be funny as well, and it just added to this void within you.
It was so confusing.
Not only is it
weird.
not right, this isn't Star Wars
No.
at all. This was done to merchandise Star Wars before for the Christmas period. It probably did the exact opposite. I wouldn't be surprised if loads of Star Wars fans were turned off there and never watched Star Wars again, just in case this might happen again. The Star Wars Holiday Special.
Is it the Return of the Jedi that has the wedding scene at the end of it? Or is it because he has the metal hand, isn't it? Or is it the Empire Strikes Back? I can't remember.
Strikes Back.
Anyway, whichever Star Wars fans are going to be on this one.
We're getting good at coordinating our dialogue, aren't we?
No.
No, I would like
We're
to
almost
say so.
finishing each other's.
Tommy Wiseau's.
That's right. Right,
Oh,
we were
right.
actually 10 down. So if the disaster happened, we had to stop there. It would have been okay.
It would have been okay, but we would just have to have done.
But
another.
frankly, this was the stage yesterday where the film started to get depressing in conversation. I mean, you might get a laugh out of it. We did not.
Yeah,
lacking
like, it
enough.
was. We
From
started
this
to-
point onwards,
the energy
films
gets
here
bad.
I wouldn't really recommend to many people.
Like, for example, the next film that we're about to go on to, we substitute every time somebody, anybody, or one of us makes an open or farts in
Flatulence.
public, or involves themselves in flatulence. we then substitute the name of this movie for.
And naturally, we're sorry to lower the tone and be crude like that, but you haven't seen this movie.
Yeah, and if you have, you'll understand.
You'll understand it's a total fart. And no one wants to be near it. It's called Troll 2.
Troll 2.
It stands at number 49. It's one of the more infamous rather, of the bad films.
A very big fault.
People that know they're bad films will have seen The Room, and probably number two, have seen Troll 2. Right. How do we begin? The cast, not the cast, the director and the crew are from Italy, and there's clearly a language barrier between trying to direct an American cast and also the script, although it was bullshit anyway, really, really suffers in translation.
To quote, "They're eating her.
They're never gonna eat me. Oh my god!" It's awful.
It's a really shit film. It's terrible.
It's basically there aren't any trolls in it, it's all goblins. They're trying to make this family who are visiting the town of Nilbog.
Goblins spelled backwards.
You didn't even need to explain that. It's clearly goblins.
Yeah.
I think it's the third man of plot twists. You know, Harry Lime appearing in the doorway. It ain't.
Nope.
They're trying to get the family to eat some of the food there to turn them into green shit that the goblins can then eat. And this is kind of the horror setup of the whole film.
Yeah, the whole
it doesn't work.
Yeah, all the goblins are orchestrated by the main maniacal bad woman who is I can't remember Madame Gielgud,
but she's of ancient Druid
origins,
yeah.
And she's one of the biggest actresses that we've ever seen. But she's kind of steals the show. She's like a reason to watch it. And there's a very good bit as well.
She has charisma, even if she doesn't have any talents.
Yeah.
It's a bit like the mullet in Stone Cold.
Yeah,
it still draws your attention. You can't deny that.
If the mullet in Stone Cold with the bad guys from... Actually, no. With the mullet from Stone Cold and then... what was that film that we were talking about? Oh, yeah, Jeremy Irons. Like... his character in Dungeons and Dragons, his overacting, kind of like made a love child, then this would be it. And like there's, like she has my children are the goblins, and then and she has to kind of like anyway. So the plot is it's about the family, and they're in this place, and then they have to eat the green stuff, and then they have to eat. And then they're trying to make them drink milk, which then turns them into green stuff at one point or something.
Yeah.
And the kid like has to stop them from eeating the green stuff, and instead of telling everybody not to eat it or to just throw all of the food off the table, stands up. Child stands. So we got up to after finishing Hobbs and Shaw.
No, we haven't started Hobbs and Shaw.
Oh
yet.
God, no!
That was yesterday. We have to have that conversation again. Hobbs and Shaw is a highly polarizing film in this house.
I loved
one of the most polarizing of films.
I loved Hobbs and Shaw.
Background here, we had a conversation in the kitchen about 2 weeks ago. That was quite enlightening, really, when it comes to what Will and myself look for when we watch a bad film. I like the dark, cringy shit. The self-depreciating, horrible shit, really. What I can't stand are films that are pompous, brazen, not self-aware, clearly after the money. These are my least favourite films. Hobbs and Shaw falls into this category.
Absolutely. And
gets under my skin.
And that being his side, you then have my side, which is that I much prefer things which are nonsensical, whimsical, stupid, have no self-awareness at all, and do things for absolutely every one of the wrong reasons. And that, for me, like, kind of feels like it grants me, a reason to laugh at it absolutely endlessly, because it just doesn't see the irony at all that the audience sees. It does not, it didn't bother to watch itself back. It just did it, and then that was the end.
And it thinks it's good.
And it thinks it's cool, which is why it's funny. Whereas, there's the other side, which is that I can't sit through cringy stuff. It's like somebody slowly inserting spikes into your bottom. I really can't. There's only so much I can put up with kind of in that, because then it really feels like it's just grinding away at my optimism bone in my brain. Thankfully,
we don't have too many of those this episode, but we're going to have loads in the future.
They get worse, Well, we're only going downhill from here, remember, people. This is the good end of it.
Yeah, this is where it started to be like, Oh God, I've got to talk about Hobbs and Shaw.
Hobbs and Shaw. This podcast is way better with Hobbs and Shaw. With Jason Statham and Dwayne Rock the Rock. Dwayne Rock the Johnson. Dwayne Rock the Johnson.
You might as well. He is a Johnson, just a penis.
Oh no, he's all right. He's an inspiring human
Look
being.
at him. He looks like a freshly circumcised cock.
You would not say that to him. His
Fuck
face-
no, would I say that?
He would.
He
fucking
wouldn't. No,
primal.
he wouldn't kill me. He would go charm offensive with me and walk away at the end of it, thinking, "Don't worry, I settled him. He now realizes he likes me," and I'd walk away like, "Fuck him. He now thinks I'm a fan of him. Fuck you."
No, he probably wouldn't. He'd probably walk away thinking like, why? Like, wouldn't be that too bothered.
That would bother me as well.
Exactly.
I have
Probably
nothing on
bother you.
his
He probably
financial
wouldn't care.
power, his gym time. I might have a brain over him, but we'll never prove that. So,
No.
sadly, it's what it is. No, I really struggled with this film. It's 2.5 hours of badly edited fight scenes that create pressure only to let it all run out of the machine before the scene really starts properly.
So
You know?
there's a bit where they all where there's like they're all going out of this mold, like this hundreds of stories skyscraper. They're all falling out of it, and then like the ropes get cut, kind of thing. And then they need to fall like at minimum 40 stories down directly. And nothing. And the only thing that breaks Dwayne the Rock Johnson's fall is like the kind of like the not parapet, like this kind of like portico, like of a steel building coming out, which he lands on.
He
his
also
side.
knows how
And
to
then
fall
falls.
faster than gravity as well to
and
catch
then
up with
falls on the
things.
floor. Yeah, and then he falls, and then he hits the floor with all of his body weight, which would have been easily way at terminal velocity at this point, hitting this little portico coming out.
As I said yesterday, he hit the floor so hard that you would have found bits of him at both ends of the block.
Unless,
However,
he's somebody that he doesn't even weigh any. He's probably he waters of what people like Zadruna Savitsky, Maris Krasnowski, and Mark Felix. These humongous dudes weigh, like Ronnie Coleman. Imagine him hitting something like that. There's just no way you're going to survive it.
But this film was full of moments like that, and
just unimaginable.
that's one of the frustrations. But there are loads. There's another infamous scene where he's holding on to a chain which is attached to a train, and with his
car. So he's attached to a truck. Which is pulled by one of his managers.
But with his other arm, he's managing to pull a helicopter.
He's holding a helicopter
towards him again.
Yeah,
it's just like
holds it.
"Nah!"
The helicopter's like, oh no, Dwayne's holding on to us, and he's like, and it's held by him. There's nothing else. It's the car and the helicopter. There's no. It's brilliant.
And did it want me to stop and think it was cool?
It's so cool. It's so unrealistic.
It was not cool.
So ridiculous.
Death Game is cool. Death Game's unrealistic and cool.
Yeah.
Hobbs and Shaw is not.
Hobbs and Shaw is cool, unrealistic, and stupid as fuck, and that's why I loved it. I thought it was so funny.
You know what? I heard you say that just then. I want to look you in the eyes and say, I want to see what you saw. It would make me suffer with the memory of that.
That's why
we had the two of us and our housemate here. They were laughing at it, and there was me at the side going.
Ross wasn't laughing. Jack and I were falling off the couch with laughter at this movie. I was enjoying it so much. Brilliant. Like the whole thing and like they do the hacker and then and they're all like as a big family together and there's like kind of like this whole like with like the Fast and Furious, we're family, with the scowling look towards the camera, kind of overcome everything, which is fine. I can.
For those who are listening to the podcast right now instead of watching it, I have my eyes to the floor waiting for this to end. Carry on.
And then and then the family in their rough and tumble warehouse managed to create weapons that are able to combat this insane arsenal of modern weaponry, which is run by Idris Elba, and anyway, yes.
Good news?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not too sure, so I wasn't quite ready for whatever that
I'll look at it later. Yes. Anyway, but Hobbs and Shaw, though, in terms of very contemporary, in terms of when this podcast is being set now, contemporary cinema and delivery of whatnot. Oh yeah, by the way, Jason Statham makes loads of funny faces in it as well.
Yeah, he doesn't know how to control his face when he acts.
It's also another good.
He sort of speaks out of the corner of his mouth all the time.
What you say? What you say to me, pal?
I love you.
Yeah, I love you, mate.
We imagine him as a sort of
he's just
secret agent / white van man who roams around London, and Croydon with machine guns that came out the side of his transit.
And he's got and all he listens to is Bo Bells in a little tape recorder. He just
and,
what do you say, Golf? What do you want to be?
Sleaford mods, proper rough and ready.
Oh fucking hell, you twat. You're like, oh god, yeah. Oh yeah, and he finishes a pint off and then goes to deal with the problem in one of the earliest scenes of the film. Anyway, we've discussed enough of Hobbs and Shaw now.
We've discussed more than enough of
Hobbs
and Shaw. Let me gratefully cross that off the list.
Yeah.
Sadly, though, you think there'd be a relief right now. There is a film that is worse than Hobbs and Shaw.
We get to the first glimpse of the second worst director, in our opinion, to ever grace the oxygen of this wonderful planet that we live on.
Oh, he's not fit to breathe air.
He maybe the nitrogen consistency of the air. He is. I don't know where to begin with him, really.
Right. Okay. First of all, we'll just introduce this very formally. At number 46, Twisted Pair is Neil Breen's latest film.
Yes.
He crowdsourced this one, and it cost him about 50 grand. And yesterday when we did this, you were out of the room, so I decided to time the question as you walked in. The question really is, what do you think he did with the money?
I don't know, Ross. We've only seen it once, but I couldn't actually fathom where any of the costing
make what he did for 500 quid.
I do not doubt that you could do that. It's a strange film, to say the least. So the plot basically revolves around.
World,
yeah, he is a world unto himself. We stop and start a lot here because in order to fully understand him as a director and who he is, he's a lot like Tommy Wiseau, but worse. Wiseau.
Oh, he's worse than Wiseau. Tommy Wiseau's innocent, really. He's naive of himself.
Whereas Neil Breen
seems to weirdly know what he's putting across as well.
Neil Breen has this megalomaniacal kind of I am God self-belief kind of thing about it, which is a recurring factor in all 5.
He plays these robotic Jesus characters.
Yeah, he plays quite a lot of Jesus, films. And then he plays somebody that's able to cure people as well. And then
he plays a heroin addict eating tuna in the middle of the Nevada desert as well.
He's got loads of phones and laptops.
The government always needs him, but it's always after him as well. The government is after me,
and he never looks at the camera.
And his laptops are never on.
He looks to the left. He's trying to break the fourth wall, but isn't able to find the camera screen. He doesn't know where the lens is, kind of thing. As if people have put.
When he looks at anyone in his films, he always looks through them.
It's through creepy. Or past or just to the right or left. It's as if, imagine somebody's looking at you and they're looking at your ear every time they talk to you, but really concentrating.
And thinking about what you look like naked all the time.
And they'll finish 2 sentences or an entire topic matter and they'll switch to the other ear. And you're like, why are you doing this?
Real creep of this earth is Neil Breen.
A very strange person, and we will revisit his movie. By the way, Twisted Pair as a movie. The plot revolves around him having an identical twin who has a beard, which is the one separating factor. Changing him from his alter ego beard self. And then he needs to fight the government that are technically against his kind of society, and then he needs to forge an alliance.
Basically, he's got a conspiracy theorist brain. He thinks all these things are up against him, but none of it correlates. If he sat down, looked in a mirror properly, and thought about his world, he'd realise it was all total bullshit. But he has woman problems that are projected onto all of his films, and in particular, Twisted Pair has a really awkward moment. a sort of Mr. and Mrs. Smith moment.
Or the bathtub bit.
No, the Mr. and Mrs. Smith bit where it's actually
The girl breaks the fourth wall. That was what I'm talking about.
I'll whisper this because I feel horrible saying it. It's kind of rapey. It's kind of rapey, isn't it? And then, like, Will and I were just like holding each other, like,
Yeah, we were like,
don't
make
don't
this
do
scene
it.
end.
I'm actually watching a film thinking it's going to happen on script. That's how bad. That's
Yeah.
how bad we're talking. And this is one of his better films.
Absolutely, like this is one of the this is high up on the list. Remember, we are descending in order of.
It's so CGI that it's hilarious, and that was why it was there. But otherwise, it's like every other Neil Breen film. What was fascinating about it is he's now 5 films in,
Yeah,
and he hasn't improved at all.
and if anything, he's gotten worse. If that's
Because he can't even realise what road he's already been down. The Neil Breen way.
He's almost a little bit of the opposite, though. As we get down to the bottom, we will guffaw and laugh a lot more at his terribleness as we get down. He's actually almost a saving grace.
Yeah.
But you still would rather watch the worser ones.
Because at least it's a bit more memorable. I mean, like next episode, if I were to just reveal a little bit, right?
Yeah, so
we have
this. I'm pretty sure it's gonna be
3 Neil Breen films to discuss, right?
Yeah, which are going to be in the next section, and then you will not.
Because it's always a mixture with him. Because his stuff is always pits of the earth horrible.
Yeah.
But is so horrible and so Neil Breen-y, you're laughing at it as well when those, you've got 15, 20 minutes of complete silence between you and I, and then we go, what the fuck are we watching?
Why are we doing
and
this?
it's funny again.
Yeah, because of the fact that you look at each other and you go, why are we watching this? You look at each other and you're about to say exactly the same thing.
But there are lots of moments where it's really not funny. Like, he goes too far.
Yeah. Like,
I mean, okay, quoting rule number 2 here, we are allowed to reference other films on the list.
I've got 2 words for you. Stock footage.
Lots of it. It doesn't have the most stock footage of his films. That's probably why it was put up there. To reveal a little bit, okay, I'm going to reveal a little bit here. Looking at our list, I've got it here. He has made one of the worst films ever made.
Ever, in our opinion. Ever.
That is when he's at his most cliched Neil Breen.
The majority of it is stock footage.
The stuff that falls in the middle, it's so creepy that it has its moments where you are forced to remember it. Therefore, there is a reason to say it's a better bad film than Pass Through at number 7.
You just mentioned the film. You said the name of one of the terrible movies. It's all right. No. He's not breaking the rule of rules here. But I personally feel slightly offended that the name of this movie was mentioned because I hate that movie.
Oh, I hate the movie
so much.
It's literally a void. Even on the list, there's a little void thing around it because Neil Breen Pass Through is like the River of Styx. If you cross it, you'll never come back. The films at the other end of this are the true underworld, the Hades.
Imagine you get a bond. You're being taken. It's not.
Neil Breen is the ferryman of
that I was about to say. Like,
he will show you where it gets to the worst you can possibly
Cerberus
imagine.
is the 3-headed dog, technically, but I can't remember what the name of the person who is the ferryman is. But imagine said ferryman. So when you get on board the ferry, you're paying a coin. Watching Neil Breen is like, imagine you get charged whilst you're on board and you can't refuse to pay. So every minute you're on there, he's charging you another coin of the ferryman. You got to flip him another coin. Otherwise, he's going to dump you into the sticks.
And he will show you some of the movies he's made.
Absolutely. Through stock footage.
I mean,
we have talked about this man enough.
I will conclude though by saying the reason we're talking about Twisted Pair and comparing it to his other films is Neil Breen is a world unto himself. He's such a character within bad films. It's very hard to discuss these films out of context.
Notice that we have become a lot more unsettled and upset as we have gone further down the list.
Did you hear the angst in our voices then? You did, didn't you?
Yes. We must now try and find optimism with the next movie, which is...
But it's only going to get worse. The Killing of Satan.
The Killing of Satan!
So what happens in that film? I tell you what, there's a telepathy scene that we're going to reenact right now. For anyone, a little gift for anyone who's watching us on a camera instead of via audio, we're going to show you the only scene in the film that is worth watching.
Totally.
Ready?
And you'll get the entire plot of the movie as well from this.
Okay.
Ross is the protagonist, and I am our antagonist, and Ross is technically the
Do you want to be the
devil.
telepathy guy? Or
I'll be this up because I can do the cross-eyed thing that he does.
Ask me where Satan is.
Where is Satan?
I am not telling you.
That's the whole movie in one scene. Okay, Ross is going to be out of it for the remainder of the. I'm just joking.
Sorry, I got Neil Breen on the way down as well. Hello, cat.
But no.
It's not going to come in. Cats are not telepathic. They can't affect you.
Dude, it's doing the fence. This is really impressive. Okay, ladies and gentlemen.
Have you never seen a cat climb a fence?
Yeah, no, but it's like doing it really well.
They're always pretty good.
Dude, I've seen a lot of cats fuck up fences.
That cat's a bit fat. She can't do fences now because she nearly died last week. So
She's back out again.
Yeah, it was a miracle.
Well,
Okay, sidetrack here. Let's talk about something nice instead of these films. So we thought the cat was going to die. It sounded like a tumor, and instead she got some rare stomach infection that was making it look like she had a tumor. And she came home 24 hours later, a bit stunned. And a cat that's never been ill. We had the group chat with the family, like, the cat's going to die. Let's do the right thing. And she survived. And I was elated. I was elated when I found out. I'm very protective of my cat. And cats generally, as anyone who knows me knows. So when this happened, mate, I was cloud fucking nine. I couldn't believe it. A cat crosses that bridge, you don't come back, ever. And this one did. Fuck yeah, Fudge. Shout out. Pretty little kitty. Anyway, the killing of Satan.
Congratulations to Ross's cat.
Thank you.
Any savior of life which gives happiness and joy to anybody, I wholeheartedly support. But as you'll find out from many other podcasts, I'm not really a cat person.
The killing of Satan. What else? I remember there was this film was filmed in the Philippines, mid-70s, I think. There's a rumor the guy went on to become a finance minister for the country.
Yeah.
This film I discovered when I was back in school, actually, and never watched it because of shit. And
It's quite featured a little bit on early YouTube, much as like things like the Rumar and Troll 2 and things like that.
Back when YouTube was good.
Yeah, like
it still has its moments, but
Yeah,
I mean,
also-
when it was
when YouTube was young and when the internet was a lot more like the Wild West, whereas it's a lot more controlled now and it's difficult. We wanted to have a film featured on this TV, but unfortunately, we can't even have like a backwards or reverse version of it.
Yeah, at the time, yesterday we were like, if we're talking about bad films, let's play a load of like
when you
Keystone Cops, Edison Studios, early stuff to prove that we actually do know good film as well.
Unfortunately, it doesn't show up well on the screen, so there's a chance that we have the time, and I have the technical know-how. I may edit it in later. But anyway, we digress. We must move on to our next movie on the list.
Yeah, that's enough for killing a Satan.
You see how much we digress from this topic because of the
We
fact
have
that
to
it's
start
a
talking
difficult
about
thing.
these movies. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a hard fucking list to get through. We have, ladies and gentlemen, on number 44, we've got 4 films left to discuss today with us. We have the one, the only, The Punisher, and it is the 2001 version. For any of you that do not know, The Punisher is based on a original graphic novel, Marvel. And I say original graphic novel, Marvel, because of the fact that it's the first.
Yeah, I'll let you discuss this one because I have so little memory of it. Let me run through it.
To my knowledge, maybe Daredevil, but I'm pretty sure Daredevil probably comes afterwards. But I'm pretty sure it's the first time that Marvel touched base with having a character which was of a lot more ruthless and gnarly caliber in terms of his dispatching of his foes and bringing together the story structure. So in this particular version, his Mr. Castle's family are dispatched of by the ruthless and horrible gang led by John Travolta, who has a pipe. He's like, man, controller. There's like a scene on the balcony in the middle of the film. It's one of the main reasons to watch the film. And there's also a fight with some ridiculous dressed dude in his apartment. Ross will probably bring it up in a bit. And then there's also another fight in John Travolta's like main kind of place with an elevator shaft that's super bloody and really gnarly. And our main character, Frank Castle, though, is there's like numerous crazy scenes where Frank should 1,000% be dead. He should really be dead. Like after, and I mean that sincerely, because the dock blows up. And they've shot him multiple times, and he's still not dead. And then the dock blows up, and he's blown by the force shockwave from the explosion into the water, which would have, for any other regular human being, have burnt the whole front of their body off, probably, and face, and would probably like whiplash their neck by like breaking it backwards, or at least done that to that spinal cord, especially because they've had multiple tanks of gasoline. And it's done like a complete combustion. But anyway, I digress. It is a hilarious movie, though. It's completely slapstick in its delivery of, and he's way over the top.
Brainless, not slapstick.
He is way over the top badass with it. Yeah, but then it doesn't need to be. This is another differentiating point between us.
Oh, we're doing it again, aren't we?
Yeah. Ross really doesn't like movies like this, but which I completely understand. But it is. I watched it with. I watched a few bits of it with my family, and it really was very funny. And I would. One of these ones where you turn over and you go. I can't believe that they made a film like this. What is it? And you go and you look. Oh God, it's The Punisher. And I'm sure there are some genuine fans out there that are probably watching this. And go, no, it's a good film, bro. It's not genuinely meant a lot to me growing up. I completely understand. That's fine. Not to us. Not really. Like, this is the wrong crowd to put that film into, because I thought it was funny and ridiculous, and Ross hated it. So
I have little memory of it, except that German bloke who comes
I told you he was going
to does the fight, while all the boring sub characters are dancing in the kitchen.
Oh yeah, so they like
that was my only memory.
He meets like the societally shunned characters that kind of help him get back on his feet, and then assist him with their brainial powers of, you know, like the kind of the cue to their James, you know, is the cue to their James Bond kind of thing. And here we go, 00, Frank Castle. You'll be wanting a bike that, you know, a sponge that turns into a giraffe.
Here's a watch that can make pancakes for you.
You know, a flamethrower that turns into a goat. You know, here we go. You know, be careful with the 00.
While you're battling the Ruskies.
You know, it's a very difficult thing. So, you know, it's a car that's invisible. You know, it's a pancake that turns into a goose. Be careful with this one, 00. It's very expensive. You know, he breaks it immediately or some shit. Anyway, I digress. But basically, I've kind of given them a very good rundown and load.
Good, I'm glad I didn't have to
John
hear
Travolta
it.
with his pipe, though.
Oh, John Travolta.
I knew he'd like that one. Anyway, we move on to the next one in our fabulous list of shit.
Oh, I hate this film.
Please, oh my God, I loved it.
It's called Roadhouse.
Roadhouse.
You might have heard of it.
Classic 80s lovers of Mr. Sir Lovely, awesome, fantastic, crazy ass, and rest in peace, Patrick Swayze.
Stop blowing smoke up his arse. The film is shit.
Oh my God, especially if you'll especially get this as well if you are a fan of Trailer Park Boys with the Swayze Express. If the Swayze Express is pulled into your train station at any point, I'm sure that you'll be a fan of this movie, because it is a cult classic amongst
it's hard to know
people.
why it became a cult. Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating.
Yeah, exactly.
But in my mind,
ridiculous.
It's hard to know why, because there are lots of films like it. It's one of the most sugar-coated and over-the-top of those like it. There's really little real plot behind its setup, really.
I couldn't give it a good
Patrick Swayze is there to be the tough guy, although he does not look like a tough guy.
Patrick Swayze is local, short.
How tall is he?
Ripped, not that tall. Ripped tough guy who is defending a bar from a load of people who are troublemakers, and then another bar which is the kind of the new opener, but it is like had a history of being the hardest bar to manage, and all the other bouncers have died. I think so. I can't remember from looking after it. So
excuse me, new manager then employs the help of said badass Patrick Swayze into looking after, taking care of this bar, and kind of the plot ensues thereon. There's a love interest.
Sorry, so go back. There's a plot.
Yeah, there's a plot ensues. There's a love interest of Patrick Swayze. He then needs to beat up the main bad guys, which we should do harm onto the bar. I can't remember if there's like a licensing thing or something, but yeah, the fighting is quite strange. But if you were baked back in the late 80s, then I can see that you would have probably loved this film. It's absolutely ridiculous, and it's reasonably quite high up on our list because it brought a lot of mirth, whimsy, and stupidity.
I'm glad you could say a few good things about it. I mean, let's go back to the comparison between you and I and the bad films. I will admit, these films that are over the top and stupid and brainless and naive are still better than most of the dark ones, and that's why, of course, I was agreeing as well. Roadhouse, like The Punisher, like Hobbs and Shaw, they are there for a reason. And just to clarify, we have not competed with each other on where any of the placements are of the film. We agreed mutually.
Oh, no, absolutely. Every single film which is featured on this list, we have analysed them through saying like, right,
where Roadhouse is in number 43, I agree it belongs there.
So you go, right, how well structured is it, and yada yada, and you kind of take it through your classic thing of going like, right, should we compare it against some reasonably okay movies, or like, or things that we both, because our tastes are quite similar in terms of a lot of things that we like. We're both like big Akira Kurosawa fans, Francis Ford Coppola, David Lean,
Kubrick, Hitchcock,
Stanley Kubrick, Hitchcock, and a German Werner Herzog. All the
Godard. You're not a big Godard fan. It's but I'm a huge Godard fan.
Steven Spielberg as well.
Yeah.
Like Spielberg for me, fantastic. Like if you could, like Steven Spielberg has not has not got, for me personally, a perfect record of making movies, but the ones that he has smashed have been unbelievable, and I just Jurassic Park.
I trust your judgment. That's why we bother with this, and you trust my. When I insist something has to be here because it is that bad, granted to you, you have definitely given way.
We never 100% agree on anything. Best we get to about 99.999%.
Death Game, fuck yeah.
But with the rare exception of Death Game,
or Turkish Star Wars, which is amazing, really.
Like the further up the list we get, and then right at the bottom and right at the top, we completely wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah, and you can probably gather right now we're treading murky water here, which is all these films.
We're going to get to a lot more.
Yeah, it's all debatable.
Really, as we get further down the list. But anyway,
that was Roadhouse. Brings us down to the final two. At number 42,
In the Name of the King 2, and we have Mr. Dolph Lundgren, a notable wrestler.
He's actually the only redeeming factor of this film because he don't give a shit and he's after a paycheck. I can empathize.
Yeah, absolutely. Fucking who hasn't wanted to just do something for the money? You try and find some, if you're working any form of piece of shit job that, or like, job that you just, like, I do it because of the fact that you work, the people that you work with, or the place that you work, if it pays you well and you can turn up 9 to 5 and do it and not go insane, and you feel like, you're contributing to the human struggle, as it were. I'm not going to get too deep into this, but
how is being in a Yui Bowl film contributing to the human struggle?
I'm just saying that maybe that's how Dolph Lundgren probably looks at this.
How did anyone look at this?
He got paid for it.
Only Yui Bowl.
And he was probably well aware that not only was it naff, silly, stupid, and wouldn't be taken seriously, but he was also going to get paid for it, and
also no one was going to see it.
Yeah, exactly. That was going to be my final point. Probably most people weren't going to watch it,
and maybe that's why.
And he got to ham it up a bit. He got to ham it up a bit, and there's girls that fawn themselves over it.
It's weird, isn't it? Yeah,
it's definitely from the script. Like, it's definitely like it subjects the actors. So in this movie, the actors are subjected to the script in many ways, which is kind of like almost a very clear representation of the tyrannical position that probably somebody like the director, like Yuri Boll, Neil Breen,
these poor actors, Tommy Wiseau, Ed Wood, which we'll get on later on. He's not going to appear for a very long time yet.
Because he's really bad.
Very lucky for that one because oh my god, he's very hard to watch.
If Neil Breen is Hades, then he keeps Ed Wood in a cage jerking off, and he's going to let them loose on the world when he's ready.
Like, the only thing that you disrespect kind of more than Hades, if you're not a Hades fan of him being obviously Poseidon, Zeus's brother, is the fact that you probably aren't so much a fan of things like Pain and Panic. And if you could combine what Pain and Panic are into one human being, it would be Ed Wood in filmmaking status.
And also,
you have no respect for him. He's he's kind of like a bitch to movies. Like, he just doesn't. And then he also is the primal creator of this nonsensical rubbish.
To make other films look bad, doesn't it?
Yeah, and just destroys Bela Lugosi's career, like, film by film. Like, oh my god!
And bear in mind, of course, this whole underworld metaphor we're doing, all of that is but a pretty veil in front of what the worst film ever made.
The worst film ever made is
the worst film ever made.
We have
is the worst film ever made.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we do this podcast right now, the worst film ever made, the DVD of it has been drop-kicked into our kitchen, and the DVD itself is slid slightly under the fridge, scarred as we could possibly get it, and we have sanded the side of the box today.
Yeah, we smashed it in the garden a bit today as well.
Fuck
we
this
lobbed
stupid-ass movie.
And do you know what? Most bits of plastic are going to break by now. For some reason, it can't be broken.
This box is indestructible, dude. This film does not want to die. It wants to live.
It has to hang around.
It's like a water bear or a prion in the brain of a pig or a young deer. It just won't die.
Yeah.
Fuck this movie. Anyway, we're on the Name of the King 2 at the moment. There's so our protagonist, Dolph Lundgren, who have multiple wonderful stories about him. One of which is, of course, the one where the guys in real life this happened. Guys break into his house and start moving stuff out and start trying to and start trying to steal things. And they uncover one of the photographs and they're who actually owns this big house? And it turns out to be Dolph Lundgren.
Shit, that's got
and they immediately put everything back and left the house. I love that story. He also, as well, has I can't remember if it's a master's but he has a degree in, I think it's like biochemical engineering or nuclear physics or something.
So, in short, you can get behind the guy.
He's a nice bloke and he's quite solid, and obviously he's been in some good romp.
But hang on. Let's discuss.
If he dies, it dies.
Let's discuss, though. Why is the film bad?
The film is bad because of the fact that it's very poorly put together, quite sexist, doesn't really make any sense.
Very sexist.
And even for the time that it subjects itself to, weakens every character the moment that they are introduced, with the exception of Dolph Lundgren, who's the only. But it would be a lot further down the list.
Because he does not give a fuck.
He really doesn't care about being.
He's Sean Connery Zardosing the film. Women are throwing himself at him, and he's just not questioning it. It's like, fuck it, I'm here now.
Salmoning his way through the script. Like, it is a.
And once they get to the other end, so there's a main plot. They go into the woods. There's some bullshit fight, and at the end, there's some witch's hut. Isn't there?
He's a contemporary day human being, and
in a fantasy world,
a portal opens up in his house. And people from the fantasy world past break into his house and... Sorry, 1 second, my mouth shut. People from the fantasy world...
That's what I'm discussing, the really, really bad film, that.
Yeah,
sucked it out of you.
Yeah, no, dude. Sorry.
No.
Yeah, thank you very much. So anyway, this portal opens up in his house, and then these people from the past / mystical, other times medieval, break kind of like, and this woman breaks into his house, and then he kind of like this is the woman he's going to end up semi falling in love with, is where the romance kind of side of this plot.
Not that it's believable at all.
Falls in love with, and then she gets chased around. Other people follow her through the portal. He then has to try and help this woman dispatch the people. He's also running a bath at the time. And then they end up going back through the portal. He does so because of the fact that I think she gets accosted by her prey, and then he needs to go back. But she gets dropped off at a different place, and so do they. And then there's also a really shitty CGI dragon that burns down a fort in the film later on as well. But then he ends up meeting this king. him and the king have a bit of a disagreement about how to run things. The king's a really bad actor and doesn't really do his lines very well, and has also becomes Dolph Lundgren's bitch. And then, then he kind of doesn't want to sleep with one prostitute. He then sleeps with another prostitute who tries to kill him. And then the whole fort burning down thing happens, and then he goes back into his kitchen. The wormhole goes back into his house, and then he ends up killing one of the guys through some big, cool third man-esque plot twist thing, usual suspects level, through the bath that he's run earlier in the film he uses to drown one of the main bad guys. Thank you very much. I'm off for a piss. Ross, can you take us through to finish this one off and take us through to the next one, please?
Oh, God, you're going to leave me alone to talk about a film called Santa Conquers the Martians, are you?
Yes, it's a piece of shit and it needs a delivery.
All right, I'll cross off that other dreadful film we talked about, the name of which I will not repeat. And I'll try and discuss Santa Conquers the Martians, made in 1964. Right. Santa Conquers the Martians, made in 1964. That's 80% of the facts in the film I've just said in that one line. You would hope that he would basically maybe train up some reindeers and then conquer Mars. That does not happen. There's a sort of morality tale here about the meaning of Christmas that completely falls flat. There are these very dry alien types on Mars, and the kids are unhappy, and so the evil Martians decide the solution is to kidnap Santa Claus. Santa Claus seems more than happy to be kidnapped. He goes around Mars, he sort of laughs about something quite a lot, and occasionally he respects that, I do kind of want to go back to Earth, it is nearly Christmas, blah, 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 blah. There is no conflict, though. There's nothing he's chasing after or running away from. He's simply on Mars for a bit, in these watching these people with these really dumb alien outfits that Ed Wood could have made. And then the film sort of ends. I can't add anything else, mate.
I'm glad that you have done that movie because I really
fuck you! You left me to do that.
Preposterously boring and very.
No, I would have done that the same.
Yeah,
there are a few films. There are a few films I'm going to make you discuss by yourself. Maybe Turkish Avengers or Vampire's Kiss or The Happening.
I know.
I'm going to plan that because these are films I don't want to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. But we'll get to those on our next episode.
We've got a couple minutes because we were out so many times that we look like we've been on for 2 hours. We actually have only been on for an hour and 3/4. So, what would you like to reflect on the first 20 films we've done so far? What was your general sense of feeling as we were progressing?
Jovial and kind of almost simultaneously glad it's over. But then I also have to say as well that I'm a little bit intrepid, simultaneously worried, but yet also excited for the next selection of films that we will end up discussing. I'm kind of looking forward to the next episode.
Part of the challenge for us really is trying to think about how we're going to discuss it, because a lot of these movies were discussed once to hopefully never be discussed again, except when we threw them at each other to have the other person remind themselves that it exists, and then you go, oh fuck, why did you remind me that existed?
We are going.
But mostly it's blocked out of our mind. But next we're going to end up talking about this, aren't we?
When we end up talking next, we will probably be talking about something a lot more happy, because we are going to break up the bad movies list, because this is only part one of a 3-part trilogy, which we'll be doing specially.
We could spend a whole episode talking about our worst film ever.
Yeah, absolutely. We literally do probably in part 4 about.
I mean, as a service to you, if we at least describe this film as much as we can remember it, which sadly we can remember all of it, both versions we've seen.
Yeah.
That maybe it might be worth half an hour at least just discussing the events of this film, just so you know why you shouldn't ever watch it.
Yeah. We could literally do just a special excerpt, another one, like a whole other podcast of just why we hate that movie.
But frankly, every film from here on in, never watch.
No, not really. I mean, there's maybe one or two.
Neil Breen, if you're keen on knowing who Neil Breen is.
There's a few Nicolas Cage ones. There's a few M. Night Shyamalan movies as well. And there's maybe one or two quirky, special, ridiculous ones. There's another. That you could probably watch, subject yourself to if you were feeling so inclined. But yeah, well, I mean, we're going to break this up though with things like we're probably going to do our top personal favorites, splicing them in and out of our favorite movies that we've ever seen.
That'd be nice
as well, which we probably might do for our next episode.
Got my list in front of me here, and it was looking good.
Yeah, and also we also have written down our top 20 or top 5 artists or bands as well, or top 10 bands.
Yeah, that's quite a hard one actually.
Which is really difficult. There's so many. So we probably might go for like a top 20 depending, or like then splice it out. It depends on how we do. We haven't quite decided on format yet for a lot of these, but we're in discussions with it. And,
yeah, as I say, we had to prioritize this project. It's been years.
We've been talking about this one for 3 years. So
And,
we've finally gotten down to getting it on a proper. You can see here that I didn't just start off with mics and I've got a mixing table and whatnot, and it's we've had a lot of internet problems throughout this podcast. I don't know if
and we did all this yesterday. It took us nearly 3 hours. And we had to do it again because I've gone this far. That's our alarm.
And that's our alarm, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you ever so much for joining us for our first welcome back episode in a long time for our Biscotti Conversations. And thank you so much for coming on for the first time, Ross.
I would say my pleasure, but it got worse. It got worse. I was okay with the first 10, and the last 10, it's like, oh, Surfer Dude, I watched that.
But yeah, thank you so much to everybody for joining us for part 1 for our worst movies of all time. Please stay tuned for part 2, which will be coming up in the next few weeks. And,
let's do soon, actually, because it does get it out of the way.
Absolutely, we'll be trying to get this out of the way soon. But we'll probably be going to be doing if you want to, you can just knock out another one this week. Come in if you'd like.
Yeah, man.
Of the good movies list or something like that, or music or something.
So
yeah,
I have time to do stuff like this.
This would be fantastic. Cool. We'll see how we'll do a good series of us as well, which will probably change up our drinks and set up as much as possible to keep you guys as entertained as we possibly can, and just be ourselves and break loose a little bit. Thank you so much for joining us, guys, and stay tuned for next time. Bye.
Peace.